Hello, let's see if this works now. Right, hopefully this is going to work on Facebook. I don't know if it'll work, but I hope it will work. Please be patient on Facebook. Unfortunately, it's been an absolute nightmare recently with getting things to actually work. So hopefully it will work. And I will just make sure that we've got also the it's doing okay. So nice to have people coming. So thank you for coming. Hello, salut, hello, merhaba, привет, merhaban. It's very nice and polyglot in terms of a message. Thank you very much. I like it. So I'm just going to start the Instagram one as well, just because Instagram is actually the best one, usually for sort of things working, strangely. Let me just make sure that I'm on the right one. Okay, here we go. Now, live, there we go. So, cancel this. Strangely, my Instagram thing is not working so well, but we'll see. Hopefully it will work now. Live again, try again. Okay, now it looks like it's going to work. It seems to always take two times for it to actually work, which is very strange. So thank you for joining me. I appreciate you taking time to come and join me live, and I've got some questions. Thank you for coming along, and good to have you here. Okay, so I released something about grammar, and I sort of wanted to sort of talk to you a little bit about grammar because I asked a few questions about it and about how it makes you feel, and I got some really interesting responses actually. I thought it was quite cool. Some of the things that you came up with and said were just simply, I think, really true. Some of the things that I really agreed with were that knowing grammar ahead of time is often a handy thing in that you get an overview of the language and how it works. So you get to see how a language actually works. And then as you go and learn more and more of it, you watch these principles, this theory spring into action, and you understand why it's doing what it's doing and how you're manipulating it. And I thought that was a really good way of putting it. Somebody on LinkedIn wrote that it's almost like a house with bricks. So the vocabulary of the bricks, and you can build the bricks up so high, but the grammar is like the cement that sort of keeps the bricks together, makes them solid, and allows you to go right up to the top to make an actual house, and for it to be stable. And there is some truth in that. So when you don't know the grammar of the language ever, you always feel a little bit uneasy with, is this right? Is this the right way of doing it? Because you can't really refer back to anything. And there is some truth to that for sure. I've met people who speak languages really, really well. In fact, I worked with somebody many years ago, and that person's English was absolutely amazing. It's one of the closest to native speaker English accents I've ever heard. Like ever. But it was very strange because this person learned English just by mimicking people and sort of obviously got to a very good ability level with the language. But very same person who spoke this incredible English made quite a lot of mistakes, and it really shocked me when I first saw it because it was clear that the person hadn't studied the grammar, and so if you don't study the grammar at all, then you can feel almost that. Thank you. I'd love to hear questions from you, Olga. So Olga Cuevas with us on YouTube, the Polyglot Conference. I really encourage you to watch. It's really inspiring. Do I know Dmitry Petrov, a Russian polyglot? Yes, I want to say 5 years ago. It might be longer. But Luca Lampariello and I went to Moscow. We were invited to speak at an event, and Dmitry Petrov was there, and he was a very, very nice guy, actually. we had a nice chat, and I found him quite a nice person to talk to, and I wish I could have spent more time talking to him. But you know, it was over dinner, and we were at an event, so time is what it is. But yeah, he was a very nice guy. Yeah, and very competent as well. I found him quite a competent person, quite a good speaker, and yeah, I enjoyed what he had to say. How can we compare grammar of different languages to make it easy? That often helps. So sometimes when you know grammar, like I always give the example of English. English has got many English speakers don't realize this. So one of the things about English is it's a Germanic language, and one of the things about Germanic languages like German, Dutch, Swedish, Danish, Norwegian is that we have one thing with our verbs that's in common, and that is we have strong verbs. Strong verbs is when we change the vowel. So for example, I swim, I swam, I have swum. And this happens in all of the Germanic languages. So there are certain shortcuts to learning grammar. If you know one language of a group, you can often extrapolate some verb forms and things like that. So I would say that there are definitely ways you can compare grammar, and it helps you to understand how to form phrases more easily and to get to the end goal more quickly. So absolutely you can. And sometimes even with grammars that are not so related, we have this form that was actually taken, I believe, from the Turkish language into Bulgarian and Macedonian. And it literally took one lesson, this mish form in Turkish, where you were not one quick sentence from Macedonian, because the comparison was really, really easy. Okay, let me see if I can see some questions coming in here on Instagram. Let me see if I can answer a couple of them. Okay. Best place to find comprehensible input for Spanish. There are so many places for comprehensible input. The written text, and then the spoken thing podcasts, for example, that you will find in Spanish. You would find on Link, there's quite a lot of stuff like this, because they have the spoken word and the written word. And where you're stuck, you can basically, with comprehensible input for anybody listening who's sort of thinking, what on earth are you talking about? That's when you read or listen to a lot of material and you take it all in over time, but there needs to be a minimum amount that you can follow, because otherwise it just turns into white noise in your head and you can't really follow it so easily. It's like sort of putting someone in front of a radio playing in, I don't know, Japanese, or in a TV show in Chinese. If you have no idea what's going on at all, you may pick up on the odd word maybe, but it would be quite difficult to sort of, it'd be a very slow process anyway. If you were ever to reach any stage, it would be quite slow. But if you've got comprehensible input with that basis of like a basic knowledge and understanding, then you can actually learn quite quickly and start hearing a lot of words that people use, and you get used to words being used often, and expressions. So yeah, I think probably look at Link actually, super, and have a look. Super Soccer. Is that Super Soccer? Sorry, the letters are so small on the screen. Sometimes it's hard for me to read. I want to take part in the Ielts exam, but I'm confused with skills about what I should be speaking or writing. I don't really know so much about the Ielts exam and how it works myself, because I've never taken it. So I wouldn't want to lead you down the garden path with things that I'm not an expert in. And so I would say it's probably better to look for the people who do work with those kinds of things, teaching English particularly for exams. So there are some really good people on Instagram and on TikTok, and even on YouTube and Twitter, who teach English. So I'd look for people who have got IELTS or the trained IELTS teachers, and look at the kinds of content they put out, and maybe ask them if there are any tips that they can share for you particularly. Okay, let me see. Groetjes uit Rotterdam, ja, groetjes. Ja, bedankt hoor. Okay, let me see. So, Olga, you asked me, ¿cuándo estuviste en España para estudiar? ¿Has aprendido catalán también? ¿Lo hablas fluidamente? Pues yo estaba en Madrid y en Málaga para estudiar. Y así que no hablan catalán ahí. Pero sí que aprendí catalán en la República Checa, de verdad. De verdad. Que estaba en una ciudad en la República Checa y tenía clase de catalán. Así que y hablo, pues hablo. ¿Hasta qué punto? No? Es difícil decir, porque no lo uso nunca, però sí, parlo català també. Però és una llengua que realment no tinc ganes de parlar aquí, a Barcelona, perquè és una llengua, sí, més similar com les altres llengües latines que parlo. Doncs no és com tan difícil per aprendre. Once you mentioned a Czech tongue twister here on YouTube. It began with the number 303. It's 333 actually, Olga. 333, stříbrných stříhaček, stříhalo přes 333, stříbrných střech. I'm sure I got some of that wrong. It means 333 silver hoses spray over 333 silver roofs, is what it means. Okay, I'm going to see if I can find some other ones here. I am learning Turkish at the moment. Do you think it's very hard to learn? Turkish is actually not, because you have to formulate sentences in a very different way to speaking quite authentic Turkish style. But otherwise, actually, I think it's quite an approachable language. Yeah. Oh, cool. Nice to see you all here. Thank you for joining, everyone. IG works best. Yeah, I do. I think that I don't know what's going on with the lives lately. The last few weeks, I've had problems with Facebook particularly, but yeah, Instagram tends to work fairly well, I think. Any advice for learning Dutch as a Spanish speaker? Well, you've already got the so it's quite similar. So that helps. That's a big problem for a lot of people. The sound. I have that in my English. My original dialect has a sound. So we pronounce originally. I would pronounce chicken. Would be pronounced chicken. The and Luke has got a softer. Luke is look. So in my original dialect, we have these sounds as well, which made it a little bit easier for me to learn Dutch when they're learning Dutch. But yeah, I mean, otherwise, I think it's just doing a bit a day and get as much as you possibly can. Let me see. Okay, so I had another question here. How do you study, with books, videos, or tutor? So I use all of those methods actually. So I like doing courses. I like being with other people. I like learning with other people. Bonjour. The thing is, for me, the learning languages for me is a very it's sort of something I like to do in company. So if I get to speak with people, I really enjoy it. And I've been studying languages like that for many years. But also, like, I'm doing Korean right now, and with Korean, I'm following the Talk to Me in Korean course that's online, and that's really good actually. It's just enough bite-sized chunks every day, so that I don't get swamped with lots of new vocabulary or grammar, and it feels manageable to learn and continue learning. And then I'm having my second lesson for Korean on, I think on Tuesday. I can't remember which day it is. I think it's Tuesday. I'm going to have it actually. So I'll have it on Tuesday, and just to practice again. And I'll just go over the kinds of things I'm doing with all of them. With the videos, I find quite useful actually. I've been reviewing Scottish Gaelic recently, and I was watching this series called Speaking Our Language, and I've really enjoyed watching that, because you go through and it's all in context, and they explain the pronunciation, they repeat it a few times. And I don't know if any of you studied Gaelic or Irish, but sometimes even Manx as well, actually, to a point, when you see it written down and how it's pronounced, there is a logic to it, but just in the beginning when you first start it, it's a little bit overwhelming, because you feel that it's so different to what you're saying as to what you see on the page. I mean, there is, as I say, there is some logic to it. It's, you need to get used to it. But I've been enjoying doing that actually, because my studies so far have felt a little bit academic, and this is actually teaching me to say things in Scottish Gaelic, which is great. I don't know if you have studied or learned Lithuanian. I don't know if you can say learn like the whole language, but they've studied some Lithuanian. So yeah, my friend Maureen has studied Lithuanian. She studied it, and she's got YouTube channel Maureen Millwood. So she has channels on YouTube, and she has a blog as well. So yeah, I mean, she studied it, and I think she's got heritage as well from Lithuania, but the language wasn't carried on through the generations. Okay, IELTS. Somebody's written here quite kindly. IELTS. There's more about the so IELTS is more about the methods of taking the exam than what the teacher can help you. Yeah, I would say that for exams, it often is that. So probably just as a general rule, for if you're taking a language exam, get the past papers to see what they ask for. Download, get materials, the written exam, the listening and reading as well. Now, one thing generally for exams that I think is a really good thing to do is look through some of the course books for the level you're going to take the exam at. See what they're teaching you and make a note of all of the things that they teach you at that level. Because what you need to do is show them that you have that knowledge in the exam. So make sure you use all of those, or as many as possible of those grammatical structures, that vocabulary, those sentence patterns, as you can during the exam to show that you've got that level. And I think that's probably the biggest key to exams, yet to advanced in German. Now, I was talking to somebody the other day actually about intermediate and advanced and what this means. To my mind, the real difference between an intermediate and advanced speaker of a language is somebody who's had more comprehensible input and had more practice with the language over time, over more topics. So it really is a case of getting to the point where you've done so much of the language that it just, you all of a sudden pass that level. And that's why people perceive this plateau, of the intermediate plateau, where you stay on a level for a long time. The reason you stay on a level for a long time is that, and you pour the language in like water. So I take my water, I pour it into my funnel. Now, the funnel, to get to here, the intermediate level, is actually it's not very much water at all. But to get it to here, to the advanced levels, it looks like it should be the same, but actually it covers a lot larger area. And so to get there, you need a lot more vocabulary, particularly idioms. You need to know about the slang, you need to know about turns of phrase, expressions, and then obviously it's honing in on grammatical accuracy as well. But those things just take time because yourself, and that's the key from intermediate to advanced. The way to do it is watching and reading news, looking at things you're interested in, talking to people about topics, setting topics for conversation with language exchange partners, teachers, about things that may be happening around the world, because then naturally you'll come across the language. Okay, so does the method for learning rules of grammar differ for each language? Potentially, yes. So what's required or what's difficult in each language in terms of grammar, what's perceived as difficult, is different for each language. So, take a language like Swedish, for example. In Swedish, learning the conjugations of verbs is very easy because it basically is the same all the way through. So you don't have any. Same for Afrikaans, same for Danish, same for Norwegian. Not true for Icelandic, not true even for English. And sometimes when things are easy, we perceive them as being so easy that we don't put any effort in at all. So I meet many people who speak English well, who just say English is super easy, the verbs are very easy, you just add an S sometimes and that's it. But it's surprising how many people forget to pronounce the S. So they'll say things like he or she say, or speak, or talk, and they won't pronounce it, the final S. And it's very important because to a native English ear, you can really hear that when it's not pronounced. So yeah, each language has its own difficulties, and the reasons for that are either to do with pronunciation or grammar, or just one language will have a more complex system for something else. Verb tenses in forming the past tense in Russian, for example, is easy. compared to, say, Spanish, where it's extremely complex, you know, in comparison to other languages. Whereas Spanish is perceived to be an easier language than Russian for an English speaker. But Russian has these noun cases which feel overwhelming for people, whereas Spanish doesn't, and so on and so forth. So yeah, each language is different. So learning to master specific grammatical structures, actually, you can't make an easy comparison with languages because some of them are very, very different. In Swedish, one of the things actually that surprised me with Swedish, which is fairly straightforward, is that many books in Sweden, buy them, you are not given always the form for the plural or the en or et form, which is how you can make some guesses as to what it is. So all these different birds in Swedish, they just had the name of the bird, and that was it. No gender, no plural forms, nothing. It was just that. And I asked my Swedish friend, how on earth do you know how to form the plural of an unknown word? And they said, do you know what? No one's ever asked me that, and I don't know. Because I can't see how you would know. Even as a native Swedish speaker, I don't understand how they know, because they don't give it in books always. Very, very strange thing. But yeah. ¿Qué es lo más difícil de la gramática noruega? Pienso que las preposiciones son veldig vanskelig. They are the things to get right. Because you ask somebody why you say a certain thing a certain way, they'll say, oh, it sounds right, or that sounds silly if you say it that way. And yeah, I mean, you just have to learn it by heart. There's no way of guessing sometimes. There are examples in some languages where if you compare preposition with English and another language, actually what you'd say would almost have the opposite meaning if you used a direct translation of the preposition. It can get super confusing. Or there are two prepositions that you can use, and if you swap them around from one language to another, then it's the same meaning, and you keep them the same way, it's a completely different meaning, which is like, happens a lot in the Balkan languages. So I'm going on holidays. I'm going on my holidays in a week for 2 weeks. If you say in English, it's in a week, so in 1 week's time, for 2 weeks. I'm going to stay there for 2 weeks. In Serbian, Croatian, Macedonian, 1 week. In or on 2 weeks, meaning they will stay there for 2 weeks. So they actually the complete opposite way around, which I find, and they always make that mistake when you hear people using it. So that kind of thing, even if I'm in a situation where people are speaking English, I will always check in Macedonian, for example, what they actually meant, because you don't know what's happening if you get it wrong, and sometimes it's very important information that you're depending on to actually do something. So yes. You love Anki, fantastic. Yeah, Anki, a lot of people do like Anki, and it can I've got to say, I've used some of these apps sometimes, and then I sort of go through phases of not using them at all. At the moment, I'm using Memrise quite a lot with Korean, because I'm finding it good to repeat the vocabulary and just to sort of test myself, see how much I remember. But yeah, I totally I get your point. After Norwegian, I want to learn Egyptian Arabic. Any tips? After Norwegian, Egyptian Arabic. That's a big difference. Thank you very much for your nice comments. I appreciate it. Thank you. Yeah, Arabic, like any other languages, I think that you really need to just, it's one of those things, it's one of those, like, Arabic is one of those languages where you need to learn quite a lot in the beginning to get to be able to express yourself at a basic level. Russian is a bit like that too, and so are a number of other languages. Some languages, you learn a little bit, and you can communicate quite quickly on a number of different basic topics. Arabic, I don't think is like that. Arabic, I think you need to have quite a high barrier sort of to get over to be able to have basic communication. But I think once you do that, then I think you can sort of ramp it up quite well. But I would say, depending on what you want to do, you could either just go straight for the dialect, go for Egyptian Arabic if you've got plans to go to Egypt, or if you want to use it beyond that, then maybe look at MSA. There's also a lot more materials around for MSA, for Modern Standard Arabic or Fusha. So yeah, have a look at what you want to do. How do you think grammar should be learned? I think, personally, I think that it depends on what you want and what you like. If you're a grammar whiz and you love it, or you're just interested in grammar, I think it's good to get an overview of the language generally. So definitely look over, go through the book to make sure you can see what's coming up, what kind of things are there. It's always handy to do if you're interested in it, right? If you're not, I think you do pick it up slowly but surely if you go through a book. Some people have no patience to do that at all, and they want to know what's coming and they want to know everything up front. That's kind of what I saw from the answers to the questions I asked this week. And I'd say only do what you want to do and feel comfortable doing. But grammar is something you will and need to know eventually, whether it's you learn it through osmosis of just learning how to express things, because that is the grammar. It's just how you then decide you study that, whether you learn the names that go with those patterns and therefore study it as a thing in itself, or if you just study the patterns and you're happy with, okay, this is how I express this idea, and you just use it. So depending on your own style and your own enjoyment of grammar, pick which one you want, is what I'd say. What's my regional dialect, intrepid guide? Scouse is my original English. So I used to talk like that as a kid growing up, and I changed. Well, I didn't change it on purpose. I actually used to talk like that because that's just the way my family talked. And when I went to school later on, I was talking with my mates, and a lot of my mates at school were from like sort of posh Cheshire, so my accent started to shift then to a more standard northern accent. And then I went to university, and at university we had, basically it was Yorkshire, so it was like, well, Hull actually, so it's different accents again. And I think because my accent sort of leveled off from there. But that's me talking in my original way. It's quite strange when I do it now because I'm so used to speaking in this way. I can revert back, but it's probably not. I don't know. I don't know how I'd react in certain situations. I think I'd probably speak the way I speak now, but yeah, it's for me, it's a different way of speaking completely. And even with different grammar, there are different grammar rules in terms of the dialect. Some of them actually you find in Scots. Some of the turns of phrase and expressions we have, words, you find in Scots, the Scots language. So I found out this summer I hadn't not appreciated just how much we had in common with Scots, but yeah, we do. And yeah, expressions. I found that at university as well, that when I went away from where I'm from, that some people from different parts of the UK didn't understand certain things I said because they just don't appear in their dialects. And I didn't know that it was a dialect word. I found that out over time. I just used it. So yeah, it's quite weird. What do you do for work? So I'm a languages consultant, and I consult for a social media management agency. And yeah, so I that's what I do. And also right now I'm doing some other projects as well, which are quite cool. I've started working on writing a few things, and we'll see how it all goes. 2021 is going to be an interesting year for me, so we'll see what happens. And I don't mind you asking. I want to answer a question. I'll just say I'm not going to answer, or I'll ignore it. But I'm quite happy to answer most questions. What's your original? Okay, I just got that now again. Okay, I see that. I hope I answered your question on my original English. Yeah, people find it quite funny when I remember I did that actually. I went into my original English at the language event in Edinburgh in front of someone I've known for years. I won't name and shame people because one of the speakers was from the same area, from Liverpool, and it's the same dialect, and I just went into this into my original dialect, and the look of surprise on some people's faces because they've never heard me speaking that way at all. So it's quite interesting. How do you divide time, grammar, work, vocab, speaking and reading and listening comprehension? So I don't know if I always see that as separate things. I think that, as I say, the comprehensible input idea of you listen to certain things, you read certain things, that's kind of one thing, right? The speaking thing is I set a time per week, where, for example, with Korean at the moment, it's once a week. But likewise with some other languages, I'll speak them maybe once a week or so. Maybe Greek or Turkish, for example. This morning I had a Turkish lesson on. It gives me the opportunity to just practice a language that I normally use on a daily basis in town or in the area where I live in the Balkans. I can use Turkish and Albanian and things, but during the pandemic, I've not been able to go and meet with these people that I'd speak to in Turkish or Albanian. So I've been having conversation classes in these languages. Just keep practicing them because they're important languages to me. But yeah, it's that really more than anything else. And I would then add to it if I felt that there was a need. So yeah, that's kind of how I go about it. Okay, I'm sorry, on YouTube, let me just have a look. I'll see a few questions coming in here as well. I'll do my best to answer them all. Okay. Hvordan har du lært dansk? Har det sikkert sagt, men jeg har glemt det. Okay. Nu forbereder jeg med dansk og læser en bog af Karen Bixen. Jeg har lært dansk, jeg var i England, var på et team i Manchester. Jeg har lige dansk med danskerne der, men jeg har bare lært dansk efter svensk. Det var for mig med teach yourself Danish. Så jeg anvendte dansk så der, og jeg fik mit job i Storbritannien for mit social element. Så jeg havde en kunde i Danmark, og jeg snakkede dansk med dem. Men det var alt. Det er lidt så svensk-dansk, men det er okay for at forstå, for at snakke med folk der. Men jeg snakker aldrig dansk nu. Nej. Nu er jeg er svært at snakke dansk her i Macedonien, så det går ikke. Men det er fint, at de lærer dansk nu med Karen Blixen. Og hvad hedder bogen? Hi, so I'm trying to study Russian with Asimil, but I find it very hard. Any suggestions, please? Okay, so what's hard, Giovanni? I think I need a bit more information to be able to answer that question. It's a little bit tough just on hard. What's hard with Russian? Because there's so much that can be hard. I get it. Animals make different sounds in different languages. Yes, they do. Whatever else. Do you notice any patterns over 50 languages? To be honest with you, I don't study so many of the animal noises, just because it would be quite weird for me to study the animal noises in any depth because I never get to use them. And I'm unlikely to want to make chicken noises or anything in a language. But sometimes there are similarities, I guess. But I don't know if I've noticed any patterns over the years. I'm going to start learning Chinese next month. Hast du etwas verschlagen? Ja, also für Chinesisch würde ich sagen schon, dass Integrated Chinese ein sehr gutes Buch ist und die haben ja für so Traditional Characters, das heißt, was die eigentlich die Zeichen, die in Taiwan und in Hongkong benutzen und so. Und dann haben die auch die einfacher, die da haben. Das ist in China und ja, ich habe das eigentlich an der Uni in Schweden benutzt und das fand ich ziemlich gut. Wir haben ja, es gab 1a oder 1.1 und dann 1.2 und dann Buch 2 für Integrated Chinese. Aber das fand ich ziemlich toll, muss ich sagen. Und das kann ich schon, ja, also als Rat geben, um Chinesisch zu lernen, würde ich so das Buch nehmen. Ja. Okay, let me see. I got a few more questions here as well. Systematic study or natural absorption? A bit of both, I would say. It's important to do both. So some natural absorption. So make sure that you do something to just listen to and hear the language for this input, this comprehensible input. But also do some study too, because es posible aprender gramática leyendo el libro acompañado de su respectivo libro. Ay, perdón. Sí, pero depende de tu nivel. Así que si vas a empezar, por ejemplo, con algo, no sé, Harry Potter en otro idioma, sin saber nada del idioma, será un poco difícil. Mi modo de ver, pero bueno. Pero está bien para escuchar el ritmo del idioma, por ejemplo, pero no tiene mucho sentido hacer eso. Yo creo que también hay que aprender algo del idioma para poder tener más sentido, ¿no? El lenguaje que utilizan para escribir. Si no, vas a escuchar una cantidad de cosas que no van a tener sentido para ti y por eso creo que está bien no sé, media hora así para escuchar el idioma, para tener una idea más o menos de cómo suena y la pronunciación, no sé, algo así, pero en general yo creo que es mucho mejor estudiar también un poco del idioma y saber algo de la gramática, algo también de frases comprensibles para ti. Depende de tu situación. Si sabes ya, por ejemplo, varios idiomas de la misma familia, a lo mejor va a funcionar, pero en mi experiencia no funciona muy bien. I think I've answered that one. How do you study? Yeah, I've got that one. Okay. I think I've answered the questions I have here, so I'm going to go back to the questions that you're writing in, and I hope that I am getting this well. What do you ever do to not mix similar languages when you speak, for example, Spanish, Portuguese, or any of the similar languages? Sometimes they do mix, and it's not the end of the world. Look, it's normal. We're human beings, and sometimes even our own mother tongue, even monoglots, will make mistakes in their own language and get things wrong and mispronounce things. And there's a thing on TikTok recently, and it was even on TV, where there's a famous chef from the UK, and they're called, is it Nigella? I can't remember her name now, Nigella something. And she instead of saying microwave, she said microwave in English, and it just sounded very strange because that's not what we say. I don't know if she said it on purpose to sound a bit quirky, but yeah, it kind of went a bit viral on TikTok because it sounded quite funny. Let me see. I can see some more questions in here as well. How many hours a day do you study Korean? Are you also still refreshing some other languages on the side, or prefer to focus 100% on one language? Fanny, I don't just focus on one language. I don't think I ever have, because at university I didn't either. I was studying 4 languages for my degree, and then I studied another 2 languages on another degree at the same time. So while I was at university, I was studying 6 languages at any one time at university level. And then I also studied other languages on the side as well, because I enjoyed just learning lots of languages. I enjoyed the mix. I enjoyed mixing them up and playing with them. So right now, yeah, my priority is to get my Korean done every day. So I do minimum of about half an hour, 45 minutes a day on Korean, sometimes a bit more. But I don't overdo it because it's the beginning. It's a completely new language, and there's no sense in rushing ahead. Look, because the thing with language is this, that it has to stick in your head and you have to be able to manipulate it and use it. And the only way to do that is for you to actually take the time to learn it. You can't rush that process. It's almost impossible, because if you do, as fast as you learn it, that's as fast as you'll forget it as well. If you don't keep speaking it and using it all the time. So I need to keep repeating the words and things that I'm doing now, I'm learning now. So yeah, that's my first priority. But then also I have, I mean, I'm not going to say studying because it sounds like I'm sitting there studying for hours and hours, and I'm not. So I have an hour of Indonesian a week where I practice my Indonesian, and I try just to move it a little bit higher every time, just a little bit. But I enjoy it, and it's language I can communicate in. It's not perfect, it's nowhere near. I'd probably say maybe around an A2 level max. But it's enough that I can communicate in Indonesian. And my teacher I speak in Indonesian for an hour. And then I also speak Turkish, Albanian, and Greek every week for at least an hour, and then possibly do a little bit in between as well. And then I have my home languages, which there are 5 of those that I just speak anyway without going anywhere, which are Macedonian, French, Spanish, German, and then obviously English. And then Serbian and Croatian and Bosnian are their languages that I hear all the time on TV. I mean, I watch programs, comedy, listen to music. Our TV is mainly in those languages, whether it's reading them or the news or whatever. Most of our satellite channels are from Croatia actually, or Serbia. So those languages I hear a lot. And then yeah, Bulgarian as well. So I speak Bulgarian a fair amount, I'd say. So yeah, I get to speak that. And then other languages as and when really, but yeah. And then at the moment I'm studying, the question is about me studying. So I study Cornish and Gaelic, Scottish Gaelic. And then also at the moment I'm doing this challenge for Manx Gaelic, and because it's the year of the Manx language, so I do one sort of lesson a day. It's on this 1,000 words in Manx site, and I've got links to it on my Instagram channel. So if you're interested in doing it, I wrote a blog post about learning Manx and learning other languages, and feel free to have a look and join in. And I've now on whatever day we are today, is it 17th? So on the 17th, so day 17, so I've done 17 days of that, and it's like 4 or 5 words max a day, and the language is actually quite similar to languages I've studied. So I'm used to the Celtic way of doing things because I speak Welsh as well. So I'm kind of used to that sort of the grammar of a Celtic language. And having studied Scottish Gaelic now for 5 months, maybe, it's quite similar. And Cornish as well. It's been about 5 months maybe that I've been studying it, and I'm enjoying them. But yeah, that's what I do. And then I study extra as and when I can. I have to work as well, so I can't go crazy, but I'm not focusing on being amazing at these languages really quickly. This is just a labor of love over a long time. How do you master English? Very easily. I was born in the UK and I was raised in the language, so for me it was really simple. But yeah, I think it's practicing like any language. And mastering is a very interesting word. Does anybody ever master a language fully? I don't know. Very few people, I think. In Swedish, which is masculine and which is feminine when it comes to en and ett? So in Swedish, actually, they're not masculine and feminine. They're called neuter and non-neuter. And I believe I always forget because Dutch has this as well. They're not called masculine and feminine in Dutch. They're called neuter and non-neuter, I believe. And en is neuter and ett is non-neuter, as far as I remember. I always get them mixed up, but anyway, yeah, it's kind of important to get it right, so it makes sense. And the thing that freaks you out is kind of like German with German cases where you've got die and der. So die Frau mit der Frau, like the woman with the woman. It sounds like you're saying der again, but you're not. It's mit because it's dative, and the dative of die is der, and it's basically, it sounds the same. So it gets a bit confusing for the learner. And it can be a little bit like that with Swedish, because you've got forms where the n is the plural definite form of some et words. So it gets, yeah, exactly, it gets a little bit strange. Do you have languages that you studied and put aside when you feel that it's complicated to come back to them and study them? Yes. And how do you manage the situations? I don't worry about it too much. So for me, languages I've done that for already are Georgian, with Armenian. I've done it with Azeri. I've done it with Hebrew. I've done it with Arabic. I've done it with Thai. I've done it with Hindi. I've done it with Maori. I've done it with a lot of languages, Honduran Lenca. I've done it with a number of languages where I've got to a point where it's what do I do? Maltese as well as another one. I love these languages, but just not ever hearing them becomes a problem. And you only have so many hours in a day. And what I do, I don't worry about it. Finnish is another one. Finnish, Latvian. I studied, and then I've studied to a level where I could communicate ideas. Right, in Latvian and in Finnish, I could communicate maybe up to like an A2 level in Finnish, and then in Latvian, I'm probably more to a B1 level. So I could communicate quite a lot of stuff. But yeah, I mean, you never hear it, so it's tough to keep languages going that you don't hear. When they're similar to ones you already know, it's easier because you just think your mind kind of bends towards, okay, that would be that in that language, which is why I can still speak languages like Catalan, like Esperanto, like I don't know, I can fudge Danish and Norwegian still because I speak Swedish. And even Icelandic to a degree, because they're related. You don't ever lose in the same ways. For example, my Finnish now is really bad, but because I don't speak another language well in the same group. I have studied some Estonian, but I don't speak Estonian. I have so many languages to try to study, and sometimes I want them back. Yeah, sometimes I do too. I did that actually with Indonesian. So Indonesian was one of those languages that I'd studied and was never using, so I just let it slip. And I decided when the pandemic started, something inside me just wanted to go back to Indonesian. And I found a teacher, and I started having lessons every week. And now it's completely back to what it was, and possibly a bit better than it was. So yeah, it's worked really well. But I don't really worry too much about it if I don't take a language back again for a long time, because look, there's only so many hours in a day, and we have to live as well, right? So, and it's nice to explore new languages, because even if you do take them all, what do you do with them all? Do you keep them all at this level and enjoy the adventure? I guess it's like if you go on your travels, right, and you travel to different countries. Do you go to the same place every year and learn a little bit more, but maybe you don't have time to explore it properly? Or do you go to another country and explore it a little bit as well, and then another place and explore a little bit? Depends what your style is. I definitely feel that for me, it's not so important to keep on all the time. When you're learning a language, do you have difficulty understanding accents from the country despite knowing the words? Not really, not yet. I'm quite good at bending my ear, so I think just that I'm used to so many different accents in English and in other languages I speak, that I do find it fairly okay to bend my ear to understand other ones. So I've not really had a huge problem yet. Might happen though, who knows? Bien, claro que es cierto que Hochdeutsch es el enseñado en todas las escuelas del mundo. Considera necesario entender los modismos y acentos de los otros modos de alemán. Yo creo que sí, yo creo que es importante aprender también el alemán de una región específica. Yo creo que está bien hacer esto, pero no lo hacen. Es que hay hay mucho acento de alemán, hay mucho dialecto también. Y sí que hay que tener experiencia con un dialecto, pero hay que hablar estándar también, porque también en Alemania, en Suiza, en Austria, tienen que aprender el alemán estándar también, ¿eh? Es que no es que como si estuvieran en la escuela hablando y escribiendo en dialecto, ¿no? Y si fuera así, sí que tendría más sentido aprender cada dialecto como, no sé, pero no hacen así. El árabe es igual, ¿eh? No hacen así. Es que es un árabe estándar en casi todos los países. Y por eso se puede comunicar con Fusha en todos los países, porque todos tienen que aprender eso. Y, y así. Similarities and differences are there between Danish and Spanish? Oh, they're both Indo-European languages. Is about as close as it gets. I mean, even some of the, I mean, yeah, I mean, you're going to have some words that are in common, obviously, the Latin words in Danish. But yeah, you don't, the languages are quite different. But yeah, just time and practice, unfortunately. There's no easy answer to that one. I want to transform my northern accent to, well, my accent's still northern in English. I mean, I still have the for grass and glass, and I don't say glass and I don't say grass. I say glass and grass, but it's more of a sort of, I guess, a standard northern accent now. Are you actually a Scouser? You've changed my mind, your accent. That is mad. Yes, so I'm a Welsh Scouser originally. That's my ethnicity. So yeah, half my family is kind of Scouse and the other half's Welsh. So yeah, that's kind of just where I'm from. So yeah, it's quite funny to see your reactions actually to the accent. Can you change your accent? I would love to speak with anyone the British accent. Yeah, well, I can change my accent. So I don't know, like people in the southern states of America talk more like that. So I can imitate most of the accents in English. It's not a big problem for me to do. So yeah, I like doing things like that. I like playing with the language, and it's fun. 2021, muchas gracias. Lo agradezco. Y a ver, para este año, coreano. Nada más. Y ya. Y espero viajar un poco también, porque el año pasado era un catástrofe. Un catástrofe. Que súper mal. Pero bueno, a ver. How many hours a day I saw that one? Podría repetir. ¿Cómo puede pasar de entender avanzado y entender mucho más? Puedo volver a hablar de esto la próxima vez, porque aún muy poco tiempo para explicarlo todo de nuevo, pero lo voy a hacer, Dani, ¿vale? Are you having any problems with Korean syntax, relative clauses? Just asking, as there are a lot of people seem to have lots of trouble. I'm probably not that far in at the moment, Tyler. So with Korean, at the moment, it's very basic where I am, but I am told that my study of Turkish will probably help with the grammar, and also I've studied some Japanese, so I'm kind of familiar with some of that. But we'll see how it goes. At the moment, it's okay. I'm not seeing these questions. So there are questions I'm getting questions on Instagram and on YouTube. And I got questions that were submitted to me ahead of this. So if you don't see questions that I'm answering, that's why. Do I make more language improvement through speaking or reading? Oh, good question. I think it feels like through speaking for me, simply because that's how you notice the improvement. But it's probably both, actually, I would say. Yeah. Do you experience with Georgian? It's a very interesting language. Yeah, I do have experience with Georgian. I studied it at university in Malmö in Sweden, and I did a semester of Georgian, and yeah, and that was kind of it. I was interested in the language because I like the script, I think it's very beautiful. And I found out that was the easiest thing about learning Georgian, is learning how to write it. Okay. Let me see. How did I enjoy the Korean Michel Thomas method course? I really enjoyed it, actually, Chanel. It was quite useful, and I found that, yeah, the phrases that I learned, the sort of the system of learning is quite useful, because you basically learn these structures and then you transfer different words onto them, and they've been very useful. So yes, I wrote a blog actually and included my thoughts on how it was. The most recent blog post that I put on my site is up to, if you're interested in learning a little bit more about what I thought of it, feel free to check it out as well. Thank you, Benjamin. That's very sweet. Let me see. Is it possible to reach B2 in French in 6 months? If you're just at home doing it, it might be a bit of a nightmare, to be honest. Because B2 level is kind of the level you need to be able to study at university. It's quite a high level. My blanket answer would probably be, in a normal situation, no. It takes around 3 months of intensive study, so that's like 72 hours of study to reach an A1 level, and then you've got to do that again for A2, and then you've got to do the A1 amount of time to reach B1, and then again for B2. So typically on an intensive course, it would take you a couple of years at least to reach that kind of level, like 2.5 years maybe to reach a B2 level. If you're doing it like quite intensively. But it depends which other languages you speak. If you speak French, you want to speak French, you could possibly get quite a better, or as good as that or better in a short period of time. Will Spanish Gaelic? When is Brett on? Okay, yeah, me, possibly in the future, who knows? I'd be asking and I would like to at some point learn it. Apparently it's very close to Cornish, but we'll see. Okay. Unfortunately, my accent sounds like a cross between Texan and Kentucky. I love it. Okay. I love that, Chanel. It's fun. I have to. I'm just looking at the time, and it won't let me save the recording on Instagram if I don't end before the hour. But so I'll end now. And it was really, really good to see you all. So thank you so much for joining me. And we will speak again next week. So please do feel free to follow me on the other social media channels if you're not. Instagram is where you can ask questions ahead of the session, and I will do my best to answer those questions as a priority first, but then also I'll look always at the questions coming in. I haven't touched Facebook this time because I don't want to risk it exploding again, because it just kind of gives up. But feel free to join in anytime, and yeah, thank you all for being part of this. I really appreciate it, and I look forward to seeing you next week. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.